Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. I have a treat. I'm excited to introduce you to Trinity Fuentes. She is with Form and Function Editorial. She has been an amazing editor working on many clients across the country. And I just wanted to take a few minutes to talk about the basics of editing because the writers out there, if you're struggling with what kind of editor you need, what do you need done to your book, and how much does it cost, and what you should do, this is where you're going to learn that. So, Trinity, thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Jackie. I'm excited to talk with you today and to help writers understand the different levels of editing and how they can make decisions based on what's best for them.
Absolutely. I mean, it gets so daunting with the editing process of what should we do, especially when you're a first time writer. You know how that goes when you're a first time writer, getting your book done for the first time and seeing what it needs, what shape it needs to be in. How do you polish it to get ready for those publishers and agents and submit that with confidence? So tell us a little bit about yourself to start.
Yeah, so I started out in the museum world and I enjoyed that for many, many years. And then I was ready for a new challenge. And I had studied creative writing in college, and writing poetry had always been a passion. And also studied fiction writing and literature. And I realized that I loved the editing process. And so I went back to school to get an editing certificate and followed my heart into developmental editing for fiction because that's what I just really love fiction and the creative process and working with writers to help them bring their work to fruition.
That's amazing. Yes, it's always when we get to chase our passions and then we don't work a day in our lives, right? We're having fun every day.
Exactly.
Tell us a little bit about the differences because I know there are differences in editing your manuscript and getting it ready for publication, getting it into the market. Tell us a little bit about the different types.
Sure. It's a little bit, it can be confusing for writers. So there are several different levels, and we'll start out with the highest level, which is developmental editing. So if you think of it as, at the macro level, that's the highest perspective that you can take. And that looks at the structure, plot, character development, pacing, scene dynamics, all of the things that you might need to do a little more work on before your book is ready to be published. And the same goes with nonfiction. That can entail a little bit more involvement by the editor at the sentence level and moving suggestions for moving things around. But the power really lies with the writer. So for fiction, the editor would make suggestions on how to maybe make a scene flow better, or maybe combine a couple of scenes or drop a character or combine a couple of characters. But these are really suggestions that the writer needs to consider and make decisions for how best to move forward with the vision for their book.
Right.
And then, so that would come first because you don't want to look at grammar and sentence structure if you're going to move things around or if scenes are going to be cut. So it's really a time-saving measure as well. And that's the most in-depth level of editing that you can have. And there is another level a little bit just below that, but still within developmental editing, which would be a manuscript evaluation. So that is still at the macro level, but not quite as in depth. It might not have as many notations and track changes within the text, and it might not have as many examples of where to change things. And then after the writer takes all of that, makes all of their changes, maybe has to write a little bit more, then there would be line editing. And that is really looking at sentence structure and flow, looking at language, and also looking at just the voice and making sure that it's all coming through. And then that is sometimes combined with copy editing. And a lot of times writers think, oh, I just need a proofread. But copy editing is really looking at grammar, looking at also at sentence structure as well, looking at spelling. But I think a lot of folks don't realize that copy editors also look at some fact checking. They look at consistency. So to make sure that you have, you know, capitalized a word the same throughout the novel or even a nonfiction book, and the copy editor will create a style sheet so that you have that to go off of. And then after all of that, and the writer accepts changes and makes all of those polishing changes, then proofreading is a separate step. So that happens after the book has already been formatted and put together, and that's the final pass. And that's looking for, stray punctuation, anything that's misspelled, any inconsistencies that weren't caught. And I think a lot of folks would be surprised to know that studies have been done that human copy editors can really only check or have about 80% accuracy. So that's why this other step is separate. And it's often better to have a separate person do the proofread because they're going to see things that the copy editor might not catch.
The more sets of eyes, the better. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Perfect. So tell us a little bit about the writers. Like, what should they consider when they're writing their fiction or their nonfiction? What are the best strategies? Do they need to go through all of those, or if they're on maybe a tighter budget, what does that look like, or what do you recommend?
Yeah, there are a lot of different options, and it really depends on your publishing goals. And that's where you should start. So for fiction, if you are going to be querying agents and trying to go the traditional publishing route, your path may look different from indie publishing. So if you go with the traditional route, they will supply a copy editor and a proofreader. So you might not need to go to foot that expense yourself, but you may want to invest in a developmental edit, and you may want to invest in working with somebody to find out where your weaknesses are so that you can polish it as best you can for the submission process.
I love it.
And then if you are publishing nonfiction, that is a completely different process because you submit an outline and your idea for the book before you've even written it. So there might be some structural things happening based on what the publisher would want. So then you would work with a developmental editor after you had written the novel or written the book, and then it would go on to the copy editing stage. So it really also depends on your level of comfort. And if you're a first-time writer, you might want to work with a book writing coach to help develop your craft, or with a book coach who will help you at every step of the way, chapter by chapter, and kind of, guiding and suggesting, though the decision making is all your own because it's your book. But then you would have a partner in the process. Fiction writers who are going the indie route, it can get quite expensive. And, when you start thinking, oh, I have to get the developmental edit and then the line edit and all of these things, there are, like I said, different cost saving measures. Like instead of getting the developmental edit, maybe you go with a manuscript evaluation. And that's usually a lot less expensive. If you really can't afford that, then maybe you have some trusted alpha readers, maybe in a writing group or a critique partner, before you go ahead and pay for a copy editor on your own. So it just really depends on your path, your goals, and your comfort level.
Absolutely. Trinity, that's fantastic. On average, I mean, I know that the range in editing services just is a huge variety. Can you touch a little bit on what the average is for someone, or ballpark for, developmental or copy edit versus copy edit, and then maybe
Yeah.
fiction versus nonfiction writers?
A good rule of thumb is the guide for or the report of average um, price ranges that the Editorial Freelancers Association publishes on their website. And so writers can go there and look at this chart, and it's laid out very in a very user-friendly way. So it'll say, copy editing for fiction versus nonfiction. There's a range, and oftentimes, it'll be like, 3 to 5 cents a word. And they can kind of gauge how much it's going to cost based on that chart. That would be a good rule of thumb. And of course, ranges vary widely based on, whether it's fiction, nonfiction, different genres, whether the editor is offering a package deal. So there really is something for everyone, but it does require some homework. And I would also suggest, find a few editors that might seem interesting to work with. And most of us offer a complimentary consultation call, and don't be shy about it. We want to hear about your story or your book idea. We want to hear about your challenges. We often offer a sample edit. So whether it's, developmental, for my developmental services, I offer a sample of what the feedback would look like so that a writer can get a feel for that. Copy editors all offer a sample edit, maybe of 1,000 or 1,200 words, just so that you can get a feel for the type of suggestions they're going to make. And that will give you a feeling. And then just find somebody that you feel you can work in a really symbiotic way and that you feel like you can trust.
Yes, that is an important point, and thank you for bringing that up. You really want to be comfortable and trust your editor. So do your due diligence, get to know them, how they work, and those samples will speak loudly as to how you can work with them and what suggestions they can offer you. So always having another set of eyes on your manuscript to help get it polished, get it into the best format possible. And if anyone would like to look into Trinity Fuentes services, I highly recommend it's formfunctioneditorial.com. Or Trinity, do you have an email they could reach you at?
I do. It's Trinity@formfunctioneditorial.com.
Perfect. And reach out and see if she might be a great fit for what you need for your manuscript. And that's it for all. Keep writing. Get that book out. Let's make you an author this year. If you have any questions, feel free to check out more information on dreamtoauthor.com. You can sign up for a free strategy session with me at my homepage at dreamtoauthor.com. I look forward to catching up with you soon.